We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the top tech trends and some unexplored areas of growth. And for that, let me introduce you to Kush Saxena. Kush is Chief Technology Officer, Markets and Transformation for Mastercard. As CTO of Mastercard, Kush is Global Head of Market-Facing Technology and Operations. He manages global technology hubs, technology product management for all product lines, technology M&A, and enterprise-wide digital transformation. Prior to this, he was also in charge of strategy and corporate development for 3 years at Mastercard. And his previous background includes H&R Block, where he was GM, US Retail, and Chief Strategy Officer from 2012 to 2014. And he also spent 8 years at McKinsey as an associate partner. So welcome, Kush.
Thank you, Alejandro.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Very happy to be here.
We would like to kind of frame the conversation in kind of different themes and topics. We would like to start off with some overall challenges of digital transformation and how Mastercard is facing those challenges. Then we're going to get, as an intro to AI, we want to get a little bit on the strategy of, for data that Mastercard is pursuing. Then our plan is to do a deep dive on AI, particularly on the business potential on AI, some appliance and use cases that Mastercard is having, particularly on business and on the core business of Mastercard, but also the impact that they have on operations, on people, government, and different players in the ecosystem. We're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity, time allowing, and finally another spot for top tech trends. So let me get you, Kush, into kind of a broad definition of what digital transformation means for Mastercard and how you see that as an enabler for growth at Mastercard.
Sure. So that's an ambitious agenda, by the way. So we'll see how much we end up covering.
We'll try to work it out.
But look, we think of digital technologies as fundamentally changing the way people relate to each other, right? So to me, it's first and foremost about how companies relate to each other, customers relate to suppliers, employees relate to others, and so on and so forth. And so we've anchored our ambition on digital transformation in our strategy around a pillar that we are calling journeys. And we are very focused there on customer journeys, consumer journeys, and employee journeys. We are a B2B2C company, so we don't serve consumers directly. We do that via your banks, or we serve merchants via banks. And so we've got both consumers and customers as stakeholders. And so those are the 3 journeys that we are focused on. And then the role of digital is really about transforming every aspect of our engagement with those 3 stakeholders, or the engagement of the stakeholders amongst themselves. And so we are doing work on the consumer side, for example, with the applications and technologies that are making it easy for us to offer our services combined with third-party services through very simple higher order APIs that can be delivered via a banking customer to a consumer. All of it enabling sort of a complete seamless experience. That's an example of how we'd be using digital to go deliver something between us, other ecosystem participants, via a customer to a consumer. Similarly, on the internal Mastercard side, we've got a whole bunch of stuff on how consumers relate to each other. So there's a lot of data mining and AI and workforce analytics we are driving, and then packaging in tools that make it easy for consumers to relate to each other. So it really is first and foremost about relationships. And there's, of course, a whole bunch of stuff that underpins the foundations for that, which have to do with taking large monolithic systems and refactoring those into microservices and so on and so forth, which I'm sure everybody knows a lot about. But that's kind of how we think about it.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. We at Globant believe in that the successful digital transformation program embraces and have different parts, like people, culture as a foundation, then design, data, technology, processes. Assuming that you agree with some of those different parts of a full digital transformation program, what are the ones that you believe or have been the most challenging for Mastercard?
Yeah, so I think, and we were talking about this a little bit in the green room. I'd say, look, for us, the biggest opportunities have been on the talent and the culture front. I think a big part of the transformation that digital enables is to really democratize decision making and bridge people that are making stuff, technologists, the engineers, the makers, with the business opportunity. And for a company of our size, there are lots of business opportunities, and subsequently, there are lots of teams of makers, right? And so, we've, as part of our transformation initiative, taken the entire operations and technology shop and kind of divvied it up into what I would call 90 mini companies, each with a North Star or a business objective, 3 or 4 operational objectives, gone as far as tying it to compensation. And each of these has a cabinet and a CEO. Now, what that means is you've got to look for 90 CEOs in your company that are, as competent and as effective and as fast as sort of what a traditional, small company CEO would be. And so I think, our biggest learning has been talent like that exists in the company. It may often be not in the roles they are playing today, or they may need, just a little bit of a developmental nudge to get them there. And I think that's really where I'd say the biggest opportunity has been for us.
Excellent. And as a follow-up to that one, Kush, and that was a question, I have it further on, but how do you how do you train that talent? How do you find that talent in the marketplace? How do you combine that with third-party talent? What's your plan and what's your program internally to develop that talent?
And so I think for us, our lens, yes, you can provide training and you can arm them with the right tools. So I'd say a big part of this is you can cover some distance on the talent gap with tooling, and on very specific skill areas like AI and data management, we are doing that, and I'm happy to talk about that when we get to the AI piece. But I think a huge part of this is getting that talent to develop judgment, right, and drive ownership and be able to traverse a really deep conversation on technology and architecture and operations with a reasonably deep conversation on the market and strategy and business, right? So how do you make that happen? We've been very focused on really leveraging rotations in the company and making sure people have diversity of experience to make that happen. So on our team, for instance, this year, we set a goal. We said 1 out of every 4 people has to take a new job. And we came pretty close to doing that. And what that means is if we keep doing that in 4 years, every single one of the people will have taken a new job, and they will have experienced a different part of the business. So I think that's a little bit of how we are approaching this. This is diversity of experience combined with tooling, combined with some training. And then I think the last thing I'd say is we play the role of, we are doing a lot. We have a good culture of mentorship, but I think formalizing that and amplifying that also helps.
Excellent. I want to get into AI, but
Sure.
Before entering into AI, a little bit on your strategy for data management. How you manage data within Mastercard? You had a concept. I saw a concept that you threw into some of the public interviews that is called data in motion. So it would be interesting to see what's the strategy behind data as a layer and an enabler for AI within Mastercard.
Sure. So the business we are in is, we ferry transactions. We move 60, 70 billion transactions between 4 or 5 value chain players, and 100% of what a transaction is really data. Mm-hmm. So, when you swipe your card, you go from moving, a message goes from the merchant all the way to the bank and comes back to the merchant. We have 4 players in between in about 30, 40 milliseconds. And that comprises data. And so data in motion and the fidelity of data in motion is as important to us, if not more, than data at rest. Now, most companies and most industries have a lot of sophistication around their strategies on data at rest. And that has to do with sort of traditional work you would do on good data warehousing and good data architecting and good data models, data pipelining, data engineering. And we are doing all of that because when this data does come in our environment, we will store it, and we will deploy all of that from a strategic standpoint on data management. What is unique, I think, to our industry is data in motion and the fidelity of this data in motion. And so, there's a lot of work we do on, I'd say, 2 dimensions from a data standpoint, which are, one is making sure this data remains secure, and the second is making sure that the privacy of this data is preserved across the value chain. And so those are really sort of 2 aspects we focus on when it comes to data in motion. The only other piece I'll talk about on data for us is Mastercard's been a big proponent of privacy and consumer ownership of their data, I'd say, for the last forever. But I think we formalized that very publicly 5-6 years ago, which I think was a very progressive position. I think this is something people are talking about today. It's getting formalized in things like CCPA and GDPR. We've been at this for a long time, and so we have, I think, one of the world's largest, most useful, commercially valuable data sets. We do a ton of work and make a lot of investments where we'll try to strip out, we will strip out all PII from that data, and yet make sure the analytics and the attributes of the data remain to keep it useful. Yeah, and so privacy is a big part of what we do internally on the data side. That also then leads us from a data strategy standpoint to being very vocal advocates for data privacy externally. So a big part of our data strategy is an external-facing position on promulgating and propagating sort of privacy. Our chief data officer is an ex-privacy lawyer. She's not your traditional database scientist. Now she's got an army of really strong data technology professionals around her. But that's how important privacy is to us. So I think there's both. I'd say there's data at rest, there's data in motion, there's technology practice across both of those. But privacy is a huge part of the strategy, both internally and externally.
Excellent. So let's try to make a quick dive into some of the AI cases at Mastercard. I understand that you have been working on AI for quite a bit. You have some interesting developments on the fraud prevention. You mentioned that you manage more than 70 billion transactions a year, and you have some initiatives there. I also heard that you have initiatives on the e-commerce predictive analytics. Maybe if you can walk us through some of the use cases for AI. And I think it would be interesting for the audience to hear about your learnings,
Sure.
Not to say failures, but learnings.
Sure. So I think I'd be happy to talk to the use cases. There are many, many of them. Mm-hmm. And our biggest learning on AI has been kind of how we think about our posture on AI, which really is, it's a technology. It's a very powerful technology, and embedded in the right way with the right data and developed by the right kind of data scientists, it can have massive influence and effect. But at the end of the day, it's a technology. Mm-hmm. And so technologies really give competitive advantages to whoever uses them, internally or externally. And so the way we've been developing AI, our approach on AI is really, not about, there's no big AI initiative, there's no AI business unit, there's no AI product unit. Our approach is to make sure that every single product, every single application, all the data sets that we have ultimately, are natively AI enabled. And to do that, we don't want to do AI for the sake of doing AI. Like I said, it drives competitive advantages. So that AI enablement has to create business value for somebody. That business value only comes when you've got a really high quality or high, a strong data scientist married with the business domain. And so a big part of our AI strategy is, number one, making sure that the data for all of these business areas are in fact harnessed and mined, and there's the right kind of governance, and you've got the right data models available on tap. And that we can empower a data scientist working very, very closely with a business domain expert. And that's actually where a lot of the tooling that I was talking about is coming in place. So we are spending a lot of time building tools that automate the process of building or deploying tools that automate the process of model selection and feature engineering and feature extraction and model validation and model governance and regulate, data compliance, right? Which will then leave the data scientists with just the specific job of leveraging or building a good model. So that's really how we are approaching AI. It's really to democratize what can be a very powerful technology in many parts of the company, drive it to the edge as much as we can. And tooling is a big part of making that happen.
Excellent. And Kush, how do you assess the business potential of AI and the impact it might have in different players in the industry or in the ecosystem? I mean, you're dealing with, as you said, merchants, consumers, a number of banks. How do you believe the transformation that is also happening at the financial services industry in many, many different instances, trading, brokerage, lending, how AI is going to be affecting and how that is connected with the work that Mastercard is doing?
Yeah, so I think, look, I divvy up the potential for AI in 4 or 5 problem areas or problem categories, right? And you've got, and I think at the highest level, those are, they sort of break up into 2 buckets, right? Where one is things that humans can do well and things that humans have never been able to do well. And I think AI will gain a lot of traction in all domains where generally things humans have been able to do well, right? So, image identification or process automation or, like data analytics to predict sort of consumer intent. I think those are areas where I suspect AI will proliferate itself. And I think it's impossible for us it's impossible, and I think it's somewhat futile to try to predict where AI will have an impact because, like I just said, I think it's a technology and it'll have impact everywhere, right? So I think we'll see a lot of value being generated in all industries, in all those domains. I think where the potential of AI is yet to be seen, and where I'm keeping a really sort of close eye, is on things humans have not been able to do well. So people trying to predict, predict stock market indexes. We are sitting at the NYSE. Being attempted multiple times, ton of noise in that signal, not clear if things will go particularly, if AI will be useful, right? So I think that's kind of how I think about the opportunity. I think you'll see a lot of deployments in use cases that are where I think humans have demonstrated prior success because learning patterns are clear. In new domains where learning patterns are not clear, where we are looking for a new type of intelligence, I think we are in very early days. Now, you looked at some of these sort of competing algorithms where you had this Go competition between a human and the AI bot. What was interesting to me there was that in the second go around, the bot developed a completely new way of playing the game, which has not been played for the last 2,000 years. That's a new form of intelligence, right? So that's interesting to watch and see what emerges there, right?
Excellent. So before we run out of time, I just want to ask you about the strategy. I know that you care for a very safety environment in terms of cybersecurity and again, as managing tons of data, a number of players in your ecosystem. How you manage cybersecurity and how's the link between cybersecurity and AI for Mastercard?
So cyber is a huge internal undertaking. We see over 150, 160 million attacks a year. They've been growing at very, very aggressive rate. A lot of the attacks, by the way, are by AI bots. Our defense against those are also intelligent bots we've deployed internally. So look, I think cyber, just because of the amount of monitoring and tracking that exists in the cyber domain internally, there's a lot of data, and that's very rich playing ground for us to deploy AI. Cyber is huge for us on the outside from an ecosystem standpoint. It's one of our largest, fastest growing businesses. We are a multi-value chain player, we play in a multiple player value chain. We are an ecosystem player. And like I said, your transactions touch 5 or 6 different players. Your transaction is as safe as the safety of or the security of the weakest link in that chain. And so we've got products and services that make every single one of those players safe. So we've got, there's a product we've got which we score 100% of our transactions, by the way. We do that in real time. And so both issuers and merchants can get a score on how likely is a transaction to be fraudulent. We do that. We've also got products that will look at the pattern of transactions and the pattern of attacks within an ecosystem and give a signal to a bank on whether they are potentially being hacked or potentially being attacked at the bank level, not at a transaction level. And then there's a wide range of these type of products that we are working on. So it's a very rich domain for us. We are very active in it. It's one of our fastest growing areas. We think it's a huge opportunity and a huge obligation to the industry.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Anand. And it has been a very productive discussion. Before you go, and before we let you go, any final recommendation? I mean, there are many people here that are dealing daily with challenges of digital transformation, AI, and how this is transforming the ecosystem. Any final recommendation as a CTO for the audience?
Look, this may sound trite. I feel like technology is the easy part, and technology will come and technology will go. The human side is the hard part, and getting people. I think the only technologies that will survive and proliferate and scale are the ones that will seamlessly embed themselves in the way humans relate and work with each other. That needs quite a bit of change and tweaking to the technologies. It needs some change in tweaking and nurturing and cultivating on the human side. So design your systems to enable both of those. I think systems that are operating at the full power of human plus technology will always, in my mind, be more effective than a tech alone or a human alone system, right? So all of this talk around will AI replace humans or will we see people leave jobs? I think, I really think as technologists, we should be focusing on the human side. I think that's where the real gold lies.
Thank you very much, Kush. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Absolutely. Thank you.